A new poll shows more Americans than ever disapprove of President Trump's handling of the economy. To discuss that and other developments in politics in our regular Wednesday political roundup, we're joined now by University of Houston political science lecturer Nancy Sims and Rice University political science fellow Mark Jones. Nancy, Mark, good morning.
Good morning, Craig.
Morning, Craig.
Let's start with this poll from NPR, PBS, and Marist just out this morning. It finds only 36% of Americans approve of Trump's handling of the economy. That is the lowest that number's ever been in Marist's polling. I guess they've asked this question 6 times now. While Americans don't seem to have much faith in either party when it comes to the economy, Democrats are slightly more trusted to handle it, 37% to 33%. 49% of Americans in rural areas disapprove of Trump's handling of the economy. That's 49% to 43% approval. The rest are undecided. In the suburbs, 60% disapprove to 33% approval. Overall, Americans are pretty pessimistic about their and the country's economic outlook. What do you see as the potential political implications of the findings in this poll?
Well, it's bad news for Republicans focusing on November 2026. The economy is one of the factors that dominates people's voting behavior. And one of the reasons why Donald Trump and Republicans did so well in 2024 was in part a rebuke of the Biden administration's handling of the economy and a belief that Trump could do a better job. What we're seeing in poll after poll, though, is that with now almost a year to evaluate the Trump administration's performance on the economy, the American public is increasingly skeptical and pessimistic about it. And that could bode very poorly for Republicans as we see a backlash against Republican candidates and a support for Democrats, not perhaps because they're believed to be doing better, but as a punishment for the Trump administration for the current state of affairs.
Nancy?
Well, and I think what you also see in that poll is core Trump voters turning against him on the economy when you've got rural areas and suburban voters saying, we're unhappy. That's a loud message from Trump core voters. And prices do continue to go up. I think many people would tell you this year that they're having much more conservative holidays than they have in the past. And so spending is still high, though, because the luxury spending is kind of outpacing the drain and the average spending. So it's an interesting situation. Now, we'll see where Trump goes with it.
To that end, the president is set to deliver a live primetime address from the White House tonight. The AP is reporting the president plans to preview his agenda for the coming year or more. Any idea what we should expect to hear, Mark?
Well, it could be anything. I think we will probably see the president try to roll out some of these tariff rebates, this idea of sending money back to American taxpayers. Of course, that would just probably, without any structural changes, fuel inflation. We also will see him tout the upcoming tax benefits, or essentially rebates that people are going to be receiving during the upcoming year in 2026 based off the big, beautiful bill and other reforms. So I think highlighting that. Other than that, we have to be watching, will we essentially go further in terms of Venezuela? There's always, there always are other topics that could pop up there. He may be addressing the shootings at Brown University and in Australia. Well, all remains to be seen.
Yeah, let's talk about that. He is being criticized to date for failing to show much empathy after those mass shootings. I guess one lingering question for me at this point is who actually expects empathy from him for anyone except himself?
Well, I think he was a little slow on his uptake on the shootings at Brown and in Australia. It was a little delayed, and I couldn't help but think, as Brown's shooting was on the anniversary of the Sandy Hook shootings years ago, 13 years ago, I believe, and Barack Obama was president, and I remember him walking out and literally crying at the shootings in Sandy Hook, and I was comparing that to what I saw from President Trump on Sunday morning, I think. I think he spoke late Saturday night, but it was just such a contrast to that. He is not an overly empathetic person. So that really came through in the situation. And then the next day, very quick to respond to the shooting of Rob Reiner.
Yeah, and he's continuing to face backlash over those comments. Reiner, again, along with his wife, was murdered this weekend. Son Nick Reiner is in custody. Trump made it about himself, falsely suggesting Reiner was killed because he was an outspoken critic of the president. When given a chance to walk back those remarks, the president predictably doubled down. What do you make both of the president's comments and the widespread reaction to them?
Well, it's part and parcel for what we have with Donald Trump as president, where he characteristically makes these statements. Sometimes he'll walk them back a little bit, but sometimes he doubles down. But the reality is we probably won't be talking about it or even thinking about it in a week or two, because there'll be something else that will have been done that we'll be focused on.
Agreed. I mean, it was egregious. And I think it made even people who support him thoroughly upset, because you just don't, in first place, it was obviously a family crisis. And you just don't, even if President Trump died tomorrow, people that don't like him would still be sad about the loss of the president. So you just don't do that. I hate to say it, but I don't really think there were people cheering. This Rob Reiner spanned most people's lifetimes that are currently living. Even the younger crowd has great fond memories of certain movies. So it was just harmful and unpleasant, and people negatively reacted across the board.
The open enrollment deadline for purchasing health insurance through the Affordable Care Act marketplace for the next year has now passed, and Congress is still debating whether to do anything following this year's expiration of pandemic-era health care subsidies. It is estimated more than 2 million people who were insured won't be heading into next year as they determine they cannot afford the increased costs. Do you expect Congress to do anything?
Most likely not. I think the best people who in those 2 million could hope for is some type of modest extension for 1 year, but that's looking increasingly unlikely.
They're not going to solve this. And more people, this is the kind of thing that hits the bottom line for Americans. And need we remind ourselves, this is what the 41-day shutdown was about. And I believe the Democrats that compromised really thought they would come back and fix it, and they didn't. So
all they got, though, was a promise of a vote in one of the houses.
Right.
A vote. They didn't specify exactly what kind of vote.
Right. And the votes aren't in their favor. So, but what I think Republicans are underestimating a little bit is how many of their own voters are facing issues with this. And I mean, it's what made Marjorie Taylor Greene resign. She has family members on the ACA. And then again, there was some thought that they would try to toss in another alternative to the ACA, and that didn't happen either. So once again, you don't offer a solution, but you don't help solve the problem.
Mark in Conroe asks, is Speaker Johnson possibly the least effective speaker in the last 20 to 30 years? It seems like they've accomplished less than any other Congress, and he just seems to be there to block anything that might be a negative for Trump.
I think the answer is in that latter part of the question. Depends on how you evaluate effectiveness. If the way you evaluate effectiveness is preventing anything that Donald Trump doesn't want to see passing, then he's actually been quite effective. If it's actually pushing through legislation that the president say doesn't want or that Congress independently wants, he's been less successful there, but that's not really his charge, and that's not really why he's speaker.
Mark Jones is a political science fellow at Rice University's Baker Institute for Public Policy. Nancy Sims is a political science lecturer at the University of Houston and the co-host of the Default of Democracy podcast. Mark, Nancy, thank you both very much.
Thank you, Craig.
Thanks, Craig.